Our next speaker essentially needs no introduction, which is why they asked me to give the introduction. And she's a lifelong activist, a woman who, and it's not an exaggeration, right? It's not an exaggeration at all to say that she has literally moved millions of people to action to make peace a reality. I want to welcome up Leslie Cagan. Please join me in welcoming her.
Well, hi everyone. It is terrific to be here tonight to honor and to celebrate David. Of course, where else but in a church basement, where they are having church services right up above us, just to make sure we are, well, whatever. Before I say a few words about David, I just want to remind people to take a minute at some point tonight to read these quotes that are up posted around the room, just for another slice, another photograph of who David is, another look at David. Also to look at his photographs, which are up here on the wall to your left. Again, just a tiny sampling of his work. And of course, don't forget to take your buttons home. I actually don't recall when I met David, but it was sometime during what we used to simply call the anti-war movement. Now I need to be clear that I'm talking about the movement against the war in Vietnam. There have been since then, unfortunately, a few more wars. But it was back at that moment when we were fighting that war, when we didn't really meet. We sort of were in the same spaces, sometimes church basements, sometimes community rooms, but mostly, of course, out on the streets. It was sometime in the spring of 1968, and I was finishing up college here in New York, already very active in the anti-war movement, and trying to figure out what I would do next with my life. And I looked around and couldn't help but notice that there were actually some people who did this full time. That is, they did peace and justice organizing full time. I couldn't help but notice that some of those people were pacifists. I wasn't. I also couldn't help but notice that a lot of those people were men. I wasn't. But still, I thought, well, maybe there's something about what they're doing that I could adapt and take on for my own. And one of those people was David. So I am a little late with this, but now some 40 plus years later, I want to thank you, David, for being one of those people, for being that model, for showing me that I could do this work, and that not only could I, but I needed to do this work, not because it needed to be done, but because I needed to be true to who I am. So I want to thank you for helping to shape my life and bringing us, many of us, myself and many of us, here to this point today. Over the years since then, David and I have been in many, many meetings together. Actually, there was a period of time when if I walked into a meeting and David wasn't there, I thought I probably was in the wrong room. We just always ended up in those meetings together. And it was a remarkable set of lessons learned over and over and over again. Not because David would stand up and say, these are the lessons I'm going to teach you, but because he lived his life the way he still lives it. There are a few things that I learned from David that stay with me constantly. One is always have a notebook and always have the best possible selection of pens available, because you never know which color pen you're going to need for which note you're writing. Very important. As you see, I have my pen and my notebook. Always stand up straight. and look as tall as you can possibly look. That was easier for him to do. It was a little harder for me. But nonetheless, the lesson was there. Stand up tall because you are proud of what you're doing and how you're doing it in the world. Never, ever be afraid to speak your mind. And most importantly, never be afraid to speak your mind when your ideas are different from everyone else's in the room. That's when it's most important to speak your mind. Never be shy. In fact, always be proud and bold about your politics. It can't hurt. It can only help. Always put it out there. And one other important lesson. If you can't win the argument outright, a good dose of sarcasm can go a long way. And in the end, if that doesn't work, just a little bit of meanness can also be useful. But do it in a quiet, peaceful way. There's no reason to get anybody upset, even if you are tearing them to shreds. So I don't know really what my life would have been like had it not been for David and a whole slew of activists like David. I think of them tonight. I think of the people that Tom Cornell mentioned, many of the people who are not here with us tonight. And I wish we had done this kind of thing for them when they were here and able to appreciate it. So I'm really glad, and I'm not forecasting anything bad immediately, David. But I'm really glad that we are here tonight on the occasion of David's 80th birthday. I want to also thank his family for not only being here tonight, but for sharing David with us. We all know, those of us in this room who are activists, and we're all activists in one way or another, that we have our large families, but we also have our more immediate families. And we demand a lot from our families. And it is incredibly important that you all are one of those families that were able to share, and to share David with this much larger community, this much larger family of social change activists, the people who are not just thinking about peace and justice, but doing what we can every single day, because there are people like David McReynolds that we are able to follow every single day. So we love you, David. Thank you so much.